So maybe I'll make my card. Kate and appointing lieutenant candidates, right? Second. Before.
And it's recording and
Right.
we're live.
Yeah, we're good to go.
We're good to go. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for being here. So we'll bring the meeting to order, and Don has something he wants to mention to begin with.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to attendance, Mary Rogers, who is our committee chair, was presented with a last minute conflict that she couldn't resolve and wanted me to express on her behalf our sincere regrets. It was something there's just no way out of, and I think she wants you all to know that she's disappointed that we had to miss this meeting.
Okay. We've got enough for a quorum, have we? We do, yes, that way. So, okay, let's have a look at the agenda, then, is there anything that we need to add? I would like to make one slight adjustment, maybe at 6.5. The last, I think Suzanne has, something that she could speak to with respect to guaranteed income.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we actually made a mistake in Suzanne's report is in the package and should have found its way onto the agenda, but it's just an administrative error.
Okay. Would that be all right at 6.5?
I can talk whenever.
Okay. Right, is there
Thank you, Don.
anything else on the agenda? Not, if someone could move, we approve.
You're in person. I move to approve the agenda.
That's good, thank you.
Second.
And we've got a seconder, so it's been moved and second, we approve the agenda. So all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Does anyone have, I'll leave it to you to declare any conflict of interest you may have. Hearing none, I think we can continue. And we can start with number 5 then, with President Ray on transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report, I'll start it with a warning. There are a lot of acronyms. As I go through it, you're going to hear ESIC, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, GFSI, VDS, Volunteer Drive Service, URR, Urban Rural Rides, CRSC, that's us, but a SIN, of course. So bear with me if I'm going to be flying through with the acronyms, but if anybody loses me, just please speak up, interrupt me, and I'll clarify. So at issue with this particular staff report, what we're trying to deal with is the really two things. One, that effective April 1st, 2024, all economic, social inclusion corporations, so ESIC funding for volunteer drive services in the region, are going to start flowing through RSCs rather through the old SINs. So previously, up until that point, that money had been flowing from ESIC through GFSI. And to the ultimate recipient community to fund, well, ultimately Urban Rural Rides to provide these volunteer drive services. The second major issue is that there was a one-time grant that was provided by ESIC to compensate volunteer drivers, increase the mileage rate, and also used to subsidize the drives. That is coming to an end. It won't be reoffered in 2024. So we've got those two issues going on in parallel. As way of background, I'm sure we all know here, but I will explain it. Purpose of VDS is to provide much needed transportation to individuals that otherwise aren't able to either drive themselves or pay for drives in most cases. We're talking about people with disabilities, low income families, newcomers. BDS is typically used to transport these people to medical appointments. So it is a really valuable service. It was established in 2021, and so I'll go over it very quickly, but the reason, and this is really to contextualize why Urban Rural Rides is used. Back in 2021, FSI contracted Silvermark Consulting with the interest in putting together a volunteer drive service program for the region. The recommendation that flowed out of that from Silvermark was to contract with Urban Rural Rides, really leverage its existing resources and organizational structure to be able to implement a program like this without having to reinvent the wheel and establish an entirely new non-profit organization from the ground up. Really to leverage those existing resources. So in November 2021, a contract was executed with between GFSI and Urban Rural Rides. They began recruiting immediately. And in March of 2022, 4 communities within the region started participating in volunteer drive services. Now, effective late 2022, and this was because of local government reform. The world sort of changed. The Service Commission started taking on newly mandated services. One of those was transportation. As such, we became the new host agency for the SID. So it's sort of a structural change, but it does impact the way that the money flows. Going forward, the indication for MISA is that all community transportation grants were going to be moving through the RSCs as a result of that. So that brings us to the grants themselves. If anybody isn't already aware, they're intended to promote and support regional-based transportation systems in New Brunswick communities. The maximum amount that's offered annually is $50,000. And so that's been received up until now through GFSI, and then used to pay for the operational costs for that overhead that Urban Rural Rides incurs in providing the programs that they do within the region. Additionally, and I mentioned this in my introduction, there was a one-time $25,000 grant that came from ESIC. And this came at a time when volunteer drive services were struggling to recruit volunteers. The mileage rates that they were paying as far as compensation to these drivers were low. As you know, I mean, it's one thing to volunteer your time, but it's another thing to volunteer your money to pay for gas bills. So the deal was on the 25,000, the intent was to increase the volunteers drivers mileage rates up to 50 cents per kilometer. In the capital region, it was used for that, as well as ride subsidies for low-income individuals to use the service. So that would offset some of their costs. That funding will disappear, as I noted at the beginning, in April. It was a one-time grant, but it will be gone come April. So we've got those two issues at the same time. We've got the 50,000 that previously flowed through GFSI, now has to flow through us if we apply. And then you've got the elimination of the $25,000 that has to be paid up. So that takes us, that's the background. You'll know that normally I just speak from heart as I'm going through these things. To me, this is fairly complicated. It's relatively new to me. I know, Suzanne, you can do this stuff with your eyes closed, but I do struggle. So you'll notice that I am reading from my script from time to time. As far as the discussion, and I say this because this is an item that has come up in the past, VDS is designed to be complementary with other transportation services, not competitive. And in particular, I'll use paratransit in the city of Fredericton as an example. Even in that situation, VDS does address service gaps. For example, not all seniors qualify for paratransit. Some individuals are qualified but are unable to get rides because of capacity issues. Some individuals that need assistance to get out to the vehicle. That's something that paratransit wouldn't be able to accommodate, where VDS would be able to accommodate. I'd say last but not least, but paratransit only operates within the city boundaries. And VDS, one of the great things about it, it's not confined to an individual municipality, so I listed this as an example in the staff report, but some people need to go to St. John for cancer treatment. Simply going to the edge of the boundary of the city isn't sufficient. BDS delivers on that. They may need eye appointments in Warren-Machto. They may have medical appointments in Miramichi. And BDS is able to complement or to address those items. And so I would see it as being complementary. Simply because there's already a system like that in place in Fredericton doesn't mean that they're not going to benefit.
So they'll deliver to other cities.
Absolutely.
Will they pick up throughout the region?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and right now, as I understand it, they operate in several communities, and that's coming up in my next
Yeah.
the next paragraph of the staff report. But yeah, they'll deliver anywhere, and ultimately, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but ultimately, we want to allow enough funds so we're making an accommodation so that we can eventually roll this program out regionally. Should we be interested in doing that, and should the interest be there from the public? So while BDS, I mean, it's never been supported at the Capital Region Service Commission level. It has in fact been supported individually at the community level, at the municipal level. These municipalities over the past 2 years have independently implemented these BDS programs within their municipalities, but it's all been one-offs. Those municipalities that have already rolled these things out include Arcadia, Warren-Machto, Grand Lake, Hanwell, Fredericton Junction, New Maryland, Tracy. So it's well established. It's just not universal at this point. No, I mentioned this before, but so I'll just go over this section quickly. Because GFSI is no longer applying for or administering the annual ESA grants, our board, the CRSC board, has to decide to support BDS if it wants to continue with ESIC-based funding for the programs. Additionally, the board would have to agree to fund $36,000. That's the staff recommendation to make up for that one-time grant that previously came from ESIC for ride subsidies and offsetting the cost of the volunteer driver's mileage. Now, the alternative to doing that would be that essentially there would be two choices from the municipalities. One, they could walk away from BDS, no more volunteer drive services offered, or two, they could pay the actual full cost for these programs, which would basically mean that they would no longer receive any ESIC funding to offset them. And that $36,000 that we could pay for at the Regional Service Commission level would disappear. So they'd have to pay the true cost, or they'd have to discontinue the service in their municipalities. And there are a lot of negative impacts from that. I won't go into detail on it. Now, $36,000, where did you come up with that? It's difficult. It's notoriously difficult to make an estimate on the cost of a program before you roll it out, before you have a full read of what the demand is ultimately going to be. But what we've done, we've worked with Urban Rural Rides. They've been very cooperative. That projected cost was based on experience that they've had in the Southeast region, as well as parts of our region, as I noted earlier, Arcadia and so on. That's where we got that $36,000. That amount would be required as a commitment to ensure that there's sufficient funds there to make sure that we have continuity in the program and the service delivery, and also allow for eventual rollout region expansion of the program itself. And the other thing I'd point out on the $36,000, we simply wouldn't cut a check to Urban Rural Rides for $36,000. They would bill us on based on actuals. So it's entirely possible that should the program not roll out regionally in the course of 1 year, that we'll have a surplus at the end of the year, and we've got a financial treatment for that budgetarily, where we can just roll that into a surplus, or we can carry it over as a second previous year's surplus, or roll it into a reserve fund. So the existing contract, like I said, is with GFSI and Urban Rural Rides. Urban Rural Rides is the only organization with the necessary resources to deliver that service. There really isn't anybody else that we're familiar with that is able to pick that up on day one and continue on with it. In this case, the net cost us of continuing BDS in the region is estimated to be $36,000 per year. That's if the service is successfully rolled out region-wide in the 2024-2025 budget year. That represents an annual savings to the municipalities that are using the service of $50,000 when you take into account the ESIC. And the budgeted amount for regional transportation services is $89,000. So cost to us would be $36,000. We've already budgeted $89,000, and that was approved in December of 2023 during the 2024 budget process. ESA grants are allotted in keeping with fiscal periods April 1st to March 31st. And accordingly, the funding that was approved in the 2023-2024 fiscal period runs out on March 31st, 2024. So that's in about 2 weeks from now. To ensure continuity of the service and avoid loss of the existing volunteer base, staff recommends that the committee agree to forward the following motion, or the motion that's included in this report, onto the board for its consideration in the April meeting. That's all I have, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Do we have, so this would, I understand, be brought to our meeting for a vote then? To forward it onto the board.
Correct.
So, does anyone have any questions before we get to that, for clarification?
I have a question. When you speak about regionalization, are you talking about looking at other programs that already exist in communities? I'm thinking of like Harvey, Natwick as well has their own volunteer drive services that they run independently.
Mhm.
So would that be looking at bringing those in under Urban Rural Rides?
I think now, this is where I'm glad Suzanne's sitting right beside me. I'm gonna ask Suzanne about that. Now, my understanding is, I'm not sure what exactly is happening in NACWIC as far as volunteer drive service, but you probably do. And I don't mean to, I apologize in advance for putting you on the spot.
No problem.
Yeah.
So I think there's ways of, merging in or coming up with some working arrangement with Urban Rural Rides will significantly increase capacity for both NACWIC and particularly for Harvey. I've tried to ascertain exactly what capacity exists in Harvey, and it seems to be quite limited.
Yes.
And, yeah, so I think we really just open the door up to improving the offering for seniors
Yeah.
in both communities.
Yeah, I think it could be advantageous for both communities, and finding volunteers is a massive struggle for us. Yeah,
And I think our compensation package might help with that too,
yeah.
particularly in Harvey.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Maybe I have another question. I know this has been happening in NACWIC, and I know it's gone outside of the former boundaries of the town of NACWIC. But does it cover all? I'd like to be able to see this cover all of the new area, which is considerably larger.
I think pattern has been that most of the rides going outside of NACWIC tend to be in Fredericton.
Yeah.
Certainly, we can expand that range.
When you say NACWIC, do you mean NACWIC Millville?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the primary destination point tends to be into Fredericton, into the Chalmers.
Yeah.
In for dialysis treatments, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So we can enlarge that capacity. For example, we've done rides to the IWK. And it ends up being like a relay system that might get someone from one point from, it's happening in Moncton, so I might get from Moncton down to the border, and then someone else picks them up there and takes them down, stays overnight. brings the passenger back the next day, they pick up another driver that takes them back, and so it's a very elegant system that works on finding solutions for those seniors that really rely on those medical treatments, to be particularly to improve the quality of life and to enable them to stay living in their own home and of the long-term care system.
I wish the governments in the Maritimes could cooperate like that in more areas. That's really nice.
Yeah, just to give an example, so I'm a volunteer driver, with Urban Rural Rides, and it's been interesting to see, when you get somebody, for example, who is regular treatment, so let's dialysis, for example. You may only drive them one way. And somebody else will take them back, so you're not, so for the volunteer driver too, you're not taking up 3 hours of your time necessarily. It all depends, and you may have a series of 4 or 5 drivers who regularly take somebody to dialysis, so that it's not too onerous on one driver to be able to do that. It's yeah, the program works great, really does, yeah.
Well, these questions have helped demonstrate the value of the program a little bit more when you see those examples. So we'll continue then with the motion. Can we have?
I just have one more question.
Okay.
If I may. So the one thing I do wonder about is how we handle the para program. So because that's not really a capability that I'm seeing right now with the volunteer drive programs. And I know we just dealt with a request at council last night, actually, from somebody local who has no way to be able to get to medical appointments because they require something that can take them in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And we don't have that right now, and I'm just wondering how we plan to deal with it.
Maybe I'll take a swing at it and then you can sort of fill in the gaps, Suzanne. I mean, from our perspective, that was an issue that we first started trying to wrap our minds around when this became a new mandate for the Service Commission. So in 2022, at that time, there were funding options where you could apply for funding from the federal government and purchase accessible vans. That's something that was done in the southeast of the province. But we weren't able to get support for that at that time. My understanding is that funding has since disappeared at the federal level. But that's not to say that if we were to receive direction from the board to pursue funding opportunities, that's not to indicate that we couldn't find those opportunities elsewhere. But you're absolutely right. That's an important part of a program like that. That's been raised by one of our directors at the board level as well. What accommodations we can make for accessibility. Now, I'm of the opinion we don't want to make the perfect the enemy of the good. I wouldn't want to discontinue our service pending the acquisition of these vans. But if that's something that we wanted to pursue in the future as a way to improve the program, I think that would make a lot of sense. Did I miss a whole lot?
The only existing capacity out there, other than paratransit, would be the nursing homes. And so if a community had a nursing home in their area, it may be an opportunity to set up one-off contracts to be able to transport folks who are not residents of the long-term care home in for medical appointments. So that's the only existing capacity I think we could leverage.
Thank you.
I can give you a price on a gorgeous Toyota RAV, fully accessible van.
They are nice. You said,
Yeah.
I remember you sending me the pictures.
Price may have gone up, you're looking at about $70,000.
70,
Yeah, it's gorgeous, Tim. Color of your choice.
that's cheap.
And there's an easily operated lever that creates a modified ramp that comes down. You go in and the person in the wheelchair can actually even turn to the right and sit in the front of the vehicle right next to the driver, just like a regular person does. It has bench seating that's removable so that you can either use it fully for wheelchairs or a combination thereof. So, but that capacity doesn't currently exist. That's the
So that's the point of
Dream solution.
the van.
It's a van. So, you just use a regular driver's license, you don't need a special licensing to be able to operate it.
Isn't there a fellow up the highway who, when I drive home, I see this, there's a guy who
Yes.
makes changes to vans for drivers. So is that something that this guy?
I think he retrofits, existing vehicles. That's the enormous building on the,
Yeah.
St. John River with the tower.
Oh,
Yeah, I think they retrofit, vehicles to take pictures that are.
Yeah.
With disabilities and stuff. But to be clear to the committee, that's not something that we're asking for today. We simply want to continue the existing service and have the capacity to roll it out. And again, it is a budgeted item, but that's certainly something that we could pursue in the future, should there be an interest.
The other thing too is that Urban Rural Rise is receiving significant funding from RDC to invest in a dispatch platform that will be accessible to groups across the province. Such that if you had some type of vehicle capacity for transporting people in wheelchairs, Urban Rural Rise could be your dispatcher. And take the service of the bus, match it up with the driver, and do the billing and invoicing.
Sounds promising. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a financial question. So there was two numbers, 50,000 and 36,000. So I'm trying to understand, does the 36,000 become the new budget number, or is that in addition to the 50, making it 86,000 in total?
No, so I'm not an accountant. I'm sure Mary Kay could give you a more sophisticated answer. The short answer, the layman's version is the 50,000 is a community transportation grant that would be provided by ESIC. And all we need there is the support of the board to apply for that $50,000. That's not something that we would have to pay for. That money would come from ESIC. The $36,000, that would come from us. That was budgeted in 2023 for 2024. During the 2024 budget process, we budgeted $89,000 for community, for transportation services. And this would come out of that line. So it would be 36,000 out of the 89,000 budgeted. So it's well under our budget.
Okay, thanks. I thought everything was going through the service commission. I didn't realize ESIC would still make a contribution. Okay.
Any other questions? That's good discussions. So I would ask for a mover and seconder for this motion to put on the process.
I do. Well, it would be to forward.
I move that subject to successful applications to ESIC for annual community transportation grants of $50,000, Urban Rural Rides will be retained to provide a volunteer drive service in the capital region for a maximum rate of $36,000 per year plus tax.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that?
And second?
Okay, we have a seconder. So is there anything on the question formally? Then all in favor, reply by saying aye.
Aye.
Against nay? Motion carried. Oh, thank you. Okay. Outcomes. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I have a report that's included in the package that, brings up the topic of community development outcomes. And, I guess the first thing I would say is, the report is really for information purposes, and, there's no decision, required by the board, nor, is there an actual decision required from the committee today. But I will end the report with a challenge to the committee with respect to our next several meetings. I want to begin by observing that, when the new mandates became effective in January of 2023, one of the requirements of this commission and other commissions was to complete a strategic plan and submit it to the minister by June 30th. So it was 6 months to prepare a plan in a number of areas, transportation, public safety, community development, economic development, tourism. It was a huge job. We were able to meet that target date, and we did it through consultation with our communities, with mayors and councils, CAOs, and stakeholders. But the amount of time did not allow it for it to be a really comprehensive exercise. And so what we do have is a strategic plan that also includes an implementation guide, which lays out targeted activities for year 1, years 3 to 5, and beyond. And ours kind of lacks some specific outcomes that we'd like to achieve. And I reproduced the 4 main areas in my report, and they start with words like facilitate community consultation, participate in public health, and communicate regional needs. So they're kind of passive roles. One of them, however, is to develop a community development plan. And that's where I'm heading with this. I'm trying to lay the groundwork for that to happen. After the first year, the staff, supported John in the development and delivery of, I call it an orientation refresher. But we had on January 6th, a very good attendance from our directors and their alternates for a morning session at the Wu Center. And in that session, staff from the different disciplines presented, sort of their view of their accomplishments for 2023. And then there was a breakdown into groups where the directors and their alternates talked about their vision or what they thought should or could happen in the various program areas. And it was a facilitated discussion led by Pivot Consulting, and they prepared a report, which we received, that outlined their views for 2024. And most of those, all of them actually, focused on housing. Supporting communities in addressing housing affordability. Rural areas also need multi-unit housing to be developed to support affordability, and talked about tackling the housing crisis. So that wasn't an area that was identified strongly in our strategic plan. And what I'd like to do, what I'd like to see the committee do is dedicate as the main topic for the next 2 months their efforts to developing that community development plan. And to do that, we need your input in terms of determining what outcomes would you like to see? Would you like to see a 25% increase in the number of meals served to through the education system in our region? That's an outcome. That's something that we can measure. It's also something, selfishly from our perspective, that we can package up and cost and include in the budget process this year. One of the challenges that we had this year in developing a community development budget was we were looking for funds to support aspirational goals, facilitate communication. It wasn't that specific. And as a result, we weren't successful in getting an increase for the community development area. And when it all boils down, this committee for this year has, let's call it disposable income of $17,000. Well, obviously we can't make an impact in community development in our region for that amount of money. But we also want to bring forward, robust and well thought out, recommendations to the board. So, kind of a heads up, that's what I'll be discussing with the chair in terms of trying to structure the next two meetings. Like you to put your thinking caps on, talk to your, colleagues, collaborators, stakeholders, and let's put stuff on the table that will be outcomes. And from that, we'll have a better ability to measure our progress and a better ability to cost it and a higher possibility of getting funds approved from the board and ultimately to be able to do more. So that's my thinking around that, Mr. Chair, and I'm hoping that the committee will think that's a worthwhile investment of their time for the next 2 months.
Thank you, Don. Do we have any questions?
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment? I just wanted to note, so I'm on a land use planning committee and I'm also on PrAC. And there are a lot of items that might be of interest that could be dealt with in updates to plans. So we have we have 4 different plans that we have to amalgamate into one. And so the minister at Delg wants all of that done by January 1st, 2028. But there are things that if we could accelerate the process with the Capital Region Planning Commission, then we could put some of those things in place earlier. And to give you a couple of examples, one would be like, perhaps we would want to take off restrictions on roadside farm stands. So we want to increase the availability of local food that people can walk or bicycle to. Another one might be reducing some of the restrictions on having apartments, like secondary suites with inside of homes. That would increase housing quite quickly. And so even though our Nashwauk plan was the largest geographically, it should have been updated in 2018. So we're already over 5 years overdue. So I know that planning and development has a lot of work to do, but I would say if we could get those plans done as quickly as we can, that could make quite a big impact on the community development outcomes.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, just in commenting on Member Floyd's comments, the Economic Expansion Committee is looking at having a presentation from the New Brunswick Housing Corporation to look at that, Amy, if you will, in terms of the secondary suites, how to increase capacity, a host of things. We're doing that. We're going to live stream that on April 15th. They're usually at 4 p.m. as part of our economic expansion meeting. And it may be something complementary that would help introduce some of the items, forwarding to the work plan. So, and might even help you in your own communities to understand what's available. We'll have information out on that. We're just setting that up, and the vice president of the corporation will be the person delivering the presentation to us, and said to certainly be more than willing to answer questions and take questions and answer as well.
Thanks. I'll do my best to join that meeting.
Okay, one of the things that Don mentioned is something that caught my attention. That's to increase the value of these outcomes by taking them beyond the passive, as they mentioned, into the measurable and then measured. Not only does it have to be measurable, but it should be measured too, so we know how successful these objectives turn out to be in a few years' time. So I really like that idea of making them measurable and some kind of a responsibility to then measure instead of just letting it go. And so I think that would be more professional
I think it's just higher quality work. Because we can participate in all kinds of things, we can be interested in this, but I think this is our opportunity to step it up a notch in terms of quality. Okay, Don?
Chair, I believe that
Yes, sir.
I'm wondering, one of the issues that I'm hearing, I'm certainly hearing it in Hanwell and I'm hearing it in other communities, is that there's a desire to have multi-unit buildings in some of these communities, but they're all on well and septic. And so that seems to be a concern, and I'm just wondering if there's a way, maybe through the Service Commission, to be able to get those best practices in terms of how you do that and what you can do. Because I feel like each little community is kind of struggling with this with no expertise on it. So anyway, just throw that out there because I think that's one way that we can address some of the housing issues in terms of affordable housing. But the question becomes how do you do that? How do you have multi-units on well and septic?
So, Mr. Chair, we can certainly bring that information forward. Our planning department and building inspectors are well experienced in that area. I'm not certain about, not certain today about the density that we can provide on well and septic, but we'll certainly get that information because it most likely will inform some of the things I'd like to discuss with the committee over the next 2 meetings.
So there is a way, Don, that's what you're saying, that because I know of buildings that are 5 apartments in them, and I know they're not serviced with the municipal water supply. So there has to be a way that whether it's the amount of water that's assured through a well or more than one well, et cetera. So there has to be a way, and it'd be nice to have a common set of rules.
Right. Well, and
In the footprint.
that would be a building code kind of thing, and our folks could certainly come to the committee and educate us on that topic.
And Mr. Chair, through you to the member Fox, Tim, I'll ask the folks that are presenting from the MB Housing Corp if they could address some of that as well to talk about, because there's synergies that have to happen in there, as Don's saying, within there in terms of there's some public safety issues around that, there's health and safety, there's size of septic, there's water capacity, water flow capacity, that type of thing. So to be able to service the units, and to what the chair is saying, that they do exist. It's just understanding the rules and regulations around it, and the investment around that is normally the kicker, right? The investment, I hate to say it, but a lot of these things come down to money these days because of the overwhelming increase in inflation over the last several years. So, but we'll certainly ask for that to be addressed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Okay, we're at 6.5. Guaranteed income, is that?
Thank you for the floor. It's a topic near and dear to my heart. Please kick me, somebody, if I start, you see me jump on a soapbox and start to get off topic. But basically, it's an appreciation based on all of the work that I've done over the past 10 or more years. And working with community groups to resolve the issue of how can we best improve the quality of life for citizens in New Brunswick, because we're recognizing that for those in dire fiscal straits who had to turn to welfare for support, that this current system does not meet their financial needs. So over the past couple of months, there's been some interesting activity happening at the municipality level with 5 of our larger municipalities having passed motions in council directing mayors to write letters to the federal and provincial governments, encouraging them to take action on investigating guaranteed basic income policies as a way to address poverty, its impacts on individuals and families, but also the broader impact on community. And in particular, as it relates to municipalities, there's a growing pressure to deal with social challenges. that were not necessarily as significant or as self-evident as they are today. What with the rising number of homeless citizens, the increase in demand for food insecurity, and a lot of pressure on municipalities to get engaged in those, in finding those solutions without an equivalent fiscal capacity to provide the elegant solutions that they wish to. So also at the House of Commons level, at the Senate level, there are motions being brought forward to investigate basic income. Right now, it has passed second motion in the Senate and has gone to the Financial Committee for more review. In the province of Prince Edward Island, they have all party consensus to proceed on a demonstration program for basic income. And they have made appeals to the federal government to engage as a partner to help finance that. And it's kind of following the model that happened with our healthcare system, in that it was Manitoba that first had medical coverage. And once that model was proven, it then spread across the rest of Canada. So PEI is saying, pick us, let's prove basic income as a potential solution. And so the discussion point here is that basic income is a direct payment that ensures that people can live with dignity. They can participate in society. They can help move forward, because when you get up every morning and you are consumed with how do I pay the rent? How do I pay the energy bill? How to make sure my kids have proper clothing and food? How can I even contemplate moving forward if I can't afford tuition? It's stressful, it's impacting folks on mental health capacity, and we have a whole segment of our society that are prevented from contributing in communities in ways that helps them to best offer their talents up for the benefit of all. And then when you take another kick at the can here, basic income does exist. We had a situation where seniors were living in poverty. And there was growing calls for attention in that, and the response was the old age security, guaranteed income supplements. And by any other meaning, that's a basic income fiscal policy to help raise people out of poverty. When families became challenged with addressing rising costs, in came a Canada Child Tax Benefit. Again, it's another version of the basic income. We've got a Canada Workers Benefit, a Federal Disability Act is now under discussion to again help folks rise out of poverty. But we're still missing a large segment of society, particularly if you're talking individuals between the ages of 18 and 65. You may have heard people talk about 65 as being the get out of poverty card, because you can be living in a homeless shelter one day and the next day, now you've got access to additional benefits. There is a chart in the staff report that speaks to that comparison between what our current social assistance rates and the measure determined to be deep income poverty. And then another measure that's being used by the National Association addressing poverty that's been struck by the federal government. They're using market basket measure, and that's basically taking a look at a local situation and understanding what is the cost for basic housing, for food, for transportation, for education, and basic costs. So just offer one example, so that single parent with one child, they're currently earning $21,657. But on a market basket measure, by any other measure that says, what does that mother or father require in terms of fiscal capacity to be able to afford to put a roof over their head, food on their table, clothing on their backs, and participate in society, they're looking instead at $34,495. So right off the bat, that tells you the amount of pressure that folks in our communities are dealing with day in and day out. For comparison, across Canada, New Brunswick has the lowest adequacy rate for unattached singles. Welfare income, sorry. So it's a basic income is meant to be that, increase in fiscal capacity and support for individuals to help them get out of that poverty trap, to help them move beyond being reliant on government support and be able to contribute in community. It's not a new concept. Back in 1970, they actually tried this out in Manitoba. And the program ran for 3 years, and researchers were able to offer basic income support to a target group of individuals. And couple of the interesting things they found is that basic income didn't cause a labor shortage. People didn't throw up their hands and say, hallelujah, I don't have to work any longer. The only ones departed from the workforce were women with young families who now could stay home and raise their kids before re-entering the workforce again, and youth who used to drop out in high school in order to get out and earn a job in order to be another source of income into the family. So they noticed an increase in the graduation rates. And they also noticed lower rates of domestic violence, worker-related injury, farm and motor vehicle accidents, and mental illness in the surrounding areas. So currently, it's our municipalities. They're dealing with the brunt of poverty in the form of precarious housing, homelessness, food insecurity, rising drug abuse and crime, default on taxes and fees, dereliction of properties and communities, and the hollowing out of our downtowns. Conversely, municipalities have very few tools to affect positive change. So what we're recommending is a motion that the Capital Region Service Commission support the concept of a basic guaranteed income and direct the chair on behalf of the commission to send a letter to the Prime Minister and the regional MPs calling for the investigation of the implementation of the basic guaranteed income subsidy supporting all individuals and families.
Thank you for that, Suzanne. A few weeks ago, I looked up on Mr. Google about living wage and so on, and a lot of information like you were talking about. But there are a lot of studies. I've been told there are a lot of studies which really support the value of this. And I think the project that PEI is looking at, I think, is a critical one. For those who support this idea, it's critical to provide that kind of proof to people that it works or it doesn't work or doesn't need this or something else. But anyway, other people may have something to say about that, for or against, so I welcome your thoughts.
I'm in support. I just have a question. Is there opportunities for further education for municipalities that haven't already gotten on board with it? Like, I know there was presentations done we talked about this before, but I'm just thinking, is there something I could share with my fellow counselors to provide more information to them, in hopes that maybe they would be supportive as well?
So I've got stacks.
Yeah, I know you do.
So that, the quick answer is yes.
Yeah.
The better answer is that I think working together to help me to understand exactly what might be the sensitive issues and where the best support needs for education exist.
Yeah.
I can pull something together.
It's more just probably a lack of awareness around that, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of in the airwaves, but it's not fully discussed. There's and so that's the work that's ahead of us right now, is to raise the level of discourse about what basic income is, what it's meant to address, what it is not, like a labor force killer. So yes.
More chats.
I should have just gone with yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyone else wish to make a comment? I'd like to, put this forward then, we don't have that motion written, so, how could we deal with that? Could you read it again, or is
There is,
it?
there is a motion.
Okay. We're going to.
Right at the very back of the package.
Okay, does everyone, have access to the motions? Okay, would, someone care to, make a motion to support that?
I can make a motion. So I move that the Capital Region Service Commission supports the concept of a basic guaranteed income and directs the chair on behalf of the commission to send a letter to the Prime Minister and the region's MPs calling for the investigation of the implementation of a guaranteed basic income subsidy supporting all individuals and families.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
We have a seconder for that. Anything else on the question? All those in favor, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good, thank you. Most, those against? Motion carried. Thank you very much. That might be a big step forward for the engine. Okay. Suzanne, number 7. PSIP update.
I wanted to apprise you of some recent grant activity. We had another round of funding opportunity with ESIC. And we currently got approval for an interesting project called Art Off the Streets. It was put forward by the Fredericton Art Alliance. The grant amount is $7,000. And they're going to be working with the 12 neighbors communities to deliver art programs based on the interests of the residents there. And what's neat is that this will become part of the overall support package that's put in place for residents that move into the community. Once they join that community, they can avail themselves of services that help them deal with some of the issues that cause them to end up on the streets in the first place. And it can help them to move towards getting more actively engaged constructively in community. And art is a huge healer and mental health intervention and an opportunity for expression of creativity. And it knows no bounds in terms of the ideas that have been percolating since between the Arts Alliance and the 12 Neighbors Project. So stay tuned. I think there will be a viewing in our future. We also received funding for Mental Health Days in Harvey. An email to about $1,975, thanks to application from Cheryl. And what's neat is that it's building off momentum of success that happened when we funded this project last year and brought it out to community to support adults who were supporting folks in their own families and trying to understand what resources are available in community to turn to. So now we're bringing it into the schools and supporting counselors in the work that they do, supporting students. And we've got the opportunity to host 2 events, one of which will be coming up in April-May timeframe, and one of which we'll plan later next year. So exciting news there, as well as upcoming community consultations for the next version of the Overcoming Poverty Plan, which is the provincial strategy for how to engage our 4 sectors in addressing disparity and inequity in our society. And it all starts by getting input from a variety of sources. So there's opportunities to go online and complete a survey. There's opportunities to meet with your neighbors and have a public conversation about issues in your own community and what you see as recommendations to move forward. There's opportunities for targeted focus groups. So we'll be going to meet with folks at Riverstone Recovery on their turf, in their space, with their staff, whom they already have trust, and get down and real about what are the issues that they see and the solutions that they would recommend. There's also opportunities for associations and groups to present briefs to ESIC, pertinent to their area of expertise and focus. As well, there's going to be sectorial dialogues. So I mentioned the public dialogues where we open the doors and anyone and everyone can come in. The sectorial dialogues, ESIC will actually be tapping people on the shoulder and saying, based on your expertise, could you come to this meeting on this date and time and engage in the exact same series of questions that we asked in the public dialogues, but we'll do it in a different space. These processes will complete in the end of April. And then they'll move forward into distilling all this information, gathering all the reports that are relevant to the topics, coming up with a strategy that will then go forward to the legislature for approval. That will most probably happen at the end of 2024 or early 2025, and that will become our overcoming poverty plan for the province. And the way that then operates is that we can take that plan as our guidepost and then put a layer onto it to say, and here's our regional sensitivities, here's our local issues, here are the assets so we can leverage for momentum in particular areas, and here's our own particular regional plan. And so our committee will be tasked with coming up with that regional plan to support the overall provincial plan. Exciting stuff.
It is. Suzanne asked me to kind of organize a public consultation process for this. So I got my two wellness ladies and they were excited. Went right after it, like I just learned very quick to be quiet and sit back and watch the work. And so
Me too.
everything is ready to go tonight at 6:30 in Melville. What we did is we had Gail and Bev and I met on 2 Fridays. And we developed lists of people to call. And the part why I mentioned that is because I was a little bit surprised at how interested and the people were that we called and anxious to participate. And last night at council meeting, the fellow who sits beside me, he said, "When is that taking place?" He said, I want to be there. And I know what he's going to be saying already, but I didn't expect that from him. And other people were really anxious to attend. And I was a little bit surprised. I thought it would be a little harder to arrive at that point. So now that I've said that, I'm hoping it turns out in Melville, but just a little story about the limits they will go to get the word out. I'm not much of a singer, but I sing in the church choir. And we practice for about 2 hours before the service at 11 o'clock, but I sit in the back row. But anyway, so after we were done, people were coming in to sit down and I was just sitting there waiting. And so Bev gets up and comes up. She said, "Bob, you should go out and you should make sure you talk about this in the service." You know, at the time when they talk about the good stuff and the bad stuff that happens in the community. So I thought, well, okay, I can do that. So I was just waiting there, and as soon as the service got started, the minister said, "Bob, got something to say on this." So I had a rare opportunity to talk from behind the pulpit in the church. So I had their attention. But anyway, I thought I better give a little background. And I took the opportunity to give a little boost to the Capital Region Service Commission and the work they do, because I thought they needed background in order to see what we were doing. So anyway, so it got the presentation there, and to everyone who took the trouble to go to church. Not that many, but enough. So it was, you never know what's gonna happen in that when the wellness committee gets going,
Yeah.
so. But with respect to the wellness committee, I'm trying to, they're not a committee of the municipality. But the municipality supports them in ways, but money flows through the municipality to the wellness. And I'm thinking there's gotta be a way to make a formal connection with the council and the work of of the wellness committee, because it just doesn't seem right that they're kind of separate to some degree. And so that's something that I want to address with council at some point when the opportunity arises. So anyway, we're looking forward to it tonight in Millville. I want to thank Suzanne for asking me to do this. It's kind of fun. So,
Now you put the pressure on me.
Yeah.
It's our next Thursday and I'm feeling that, but I did reach out to some people last night, fingers crossed. But I did wanna,
It's behind the pulpit.
I did not have that opportunity, no. I did wanna say how pleased I am to hear about the art classes that are taking place. Because I know that's something that John Howard does as well at the Oak Center. Every Thursday, there's art classes and every Friday, there's music classes. And it's made a huge difference in people's lives. I think it's incredible the difference it's made. I've seen it especially with music classes, to be honest, like, you know, folks who now constantly have an instrument in their hands are feeling really excited about getting up in the morning and getting to it. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there that I'm really excited to hear that.
another art form, we were talking about art a while ago. And so, yeah. Okay, can we move on? We're ready? Resiliency update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I'm cognizant of time, so I'll keep it brief, but just as an update, I find our network growing, which has been really refreshing to see. I think I'm celebrating almost 2 years in this position, and like I mentioned before, starting out with, you know, just a few people around our table, we're really starting to see that regional network, not just folks in the city, but where urban meets rural. And I've mentioned before, many of our projects are focusing on some of the outskirts per se. But what's really been exciting the last couple of months is the projects that don't have any dollar amounts allotted to it. So we've had some really great discussion around how do we support our housing portfolio, food security, school food. That's a big hub word in the province right now. And we're seeing many different stakeholders come to those meetings with different lenses to share what they're experiencing with their clientele, what assets or what things we're not considering. So we had some really great discussions this week at our last housing meeting, and just trying to figure out like how do we support, what is our role in this, and bring things forward that we might not have been considering for those vulnerable populations as well. Yeah, so I would say a good attendance. We have at least 20 or more that show up to our monthly meetings. We've been hosting them virtually and in person at the Ville. There's a couple of updates that are on the go right now. Arcadia are circulating their survey, so many municipalities may have received that by email at this point. They're surveying farmers and woodlot owners around what they can do to support economic growth or to address any gaps. So that is active at this point. I'm also working with Chief Farrell and Chief Gordon with the Capital District Firefighter Association. So around who's using the Voyant communication. So trying to get a pool of who's there, who needs support, who's interested, and then how can we engage those stakeholders. So that has also gone out to all of the municipalities at this point. We also, I guess, had the opportunity to participate in the New Brunswick Physical Activity Strategy for Region 11, and it included Region 12 as well, as there's some overlap. And a lot of discussion around how can we promote that infrastructure that exists, our natural green spaces. In my other hat, our playgrounds and that nature. It overlaps, of course, with those living in poverty and how can we align those strategies. But overall, great discussions being had and more partners, I guess, invested or interested in learning more about what maybe we could do as a region. So our next meeting is Tuesday, the 26th from 10 to 2. Again, I open my doors if there's anybody interested in attending or wanting to learn more. We're trying to structure those meetings where we're learning about more of the work that's happening around the table. It's very apparent that we work in our silos at times, so we may be working on one thing and we find that connection in the room of how we can work together and build that capacity. So a little bit of learning and more or less planning on how we can support those partners in the projects and looking ahead at some of those long-term goals based on the priorities we've selected. So that's a quick summary. Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Carrie. Do we have any questions or comments for Carrie? Okay. Is there anything else? That brings us to the end of our agenda. So if there's nothing else, motion to adjourn would suffice. Okay.